Welcome to Happy to See Me, the podcast that puts the spotlight on the overlooked and underestimated. I'm Erika Casupanan, the first Canadian to win Survivor. But before that, I was a Filipino immigrant and corporate perfectionist who felt doubted and overlooked. Now I'm here to prove that every journey, whether messy, beautiful, or unexpected, is worth celebrating. Every Monday, I bring you candid conversations and relatable pep talks with guests who've defied expectations. If you're ready to feel seen, celebrated, and empowered, you're in the right place. And here, I'm always happy to see you. It is my first time on the mic in a few weeks. I usually record the interviews weeks in advance, sometimes more than a month in advance, and then I record a little intro after. And the reason I'm sharing that is because it is actually my first time on the mic since the Lapu-Lapu Day Festival tragedy in Vancouver. I know at this point I don't need to explain what happened. I usually start every episode by talking about something I was happy to see this week. And this week, I don't think I can share something that I was happy to see because I know that a community that I'm part of is still mourning, and I'm still mourning. I want to send so much love and so many prayers to the victims, to everybody who lost a loved one or a family member, and to all of the witnesses who now carry these dark memories with them. I'm sending you so much love and so much support, and my heart is with you. On this podcast, I always talk about putting the spotlight on the overlooked and underestimated. And I know that as a Filipino person growing up in North America, it's really common to feel like you're misunderstood or like you're overlooked. And I know these Filipino community events are so important. I grew up going to Filipino community events. I still go to Filipino street festivals here in Toronto. And I know that at these events, there are moments when you don't have to feel shame. You are understood. You are home. These events are joyful and they are celebrations. And it breaks my heart that a celebration ended in such tragedy. So my heart is still broken along with everybody else. And I'm so sorry, and I'm sending you all so much love. I'm going to add a link to Filipino BC in the show notes so you can learn more about how to donate to the families who lost loved ones and how you can support the Filipino community in Vancouver. This episode I actually recorded weeks and weeks ago, and I always knew this was the episode I wanted to share at the beginning of May. I thought it was the perfect way to start AAPI month. And truthfully, it's one of my favorite interviews I've recorded. I'm speaking with Krystl Fabella. She is the founder of Filipina on the Rise, which is a global media and events company and the #1 podcast that spotlights barrier-breaking Filipino women. She is the definition of a badass and community builder. And I was so excited to share this episode at the beginning of AAPI month because we have this amazing conversation where we talk about how our Filipino heritage impacted our approach to work, learning to take up space, talking about our shared experiences with imposter syndrome and having self-compassion for ourselves, and really learning to live unapologetically. It's truly such an empowering conversation, and I was so excited to share it with you all. And now, given everything that's happened within the Filipino community, I listened to this episode again this week, and I couldn't help but think about the Filipino concept of kapwa. And I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce it right. Kapwa is a profound sense of shared identity, community, and connectedness with others. In this episode, Krystl and I truly come together in kapwa. We live miles and miles away. Krystl is in Texas. I'm here in Toronto. We have never met in person before. And yet in this conversation, we talk about so many shared experiences. We talk about our shared experiences growing up, our shared challenges, our shared wins, our shared journeys to really owning who we are and taking up space, and our shared resilience in knowing that we can overcome whatever is in front of us. And if there's something that has given me a bit of happiness at this time that I hope can give a bit of joy to the people listening, it's this conversation between two Filipinas who are coming together in kapwa to share our journeys and to empower our communities. I hope this conversation empowers and inspires you the same way that it inspired me. I am sending everybody here so much love. You are in my heart. I am right beside you in all of the feelings that you are feeling. So why don't we just get into it? Here is my conversation with Krystl Fabella. I hope you enjoy it. I mean, I wore the suit and I showed up and I did the things that I was supposed to do. I never loved doing it. I think even wearing the suit, I always felt like I was playing dress up. I was like playing the role of the person I thought I should be versus being me. When you were working, did you feel like you were good at wearing the suit and playing that game?
Yeah, it's so interesting because like working in tech and stuff, there's already that, that evolution of the workplace look where everybody was kind of more casual and stuff. But I did notice when I would attend things where I had to represent myself, whether it was a conference or speaking or professional networking events or summits and stuff, the suit was always on. And I look back and like I brought this up with some friends and women empowerment community that I'm in. Raise your hand if you actually enjoy wearing a suit. I love to see it on women who can rock it, but truly the blazer, the pantsuit thing was never something that naturally felt like myself and like powerful, but yet we put it on. And it's just another version of kind of like playing up to the game also it was all created with men in mind and stuff. So it's interesting, the whole power suit, I think with like the boss girl movement and like boss girl era, right? That, we put on our hot pink power suits and we show that like we can lean in and we are leaders and stuff. When you think about that and you really break down the boss girl movement, how much of it and like neo-feminism and stuff is actually, first of all, still like in context to the men in the masculine world. And also we think about like white feminism and how that kind of led the movement versus what does powerful feminism or whatever you may call like powerful in your life look like to us, to ourselves, without the context of like, well, we can do it like what the men can too, so we're going to put it on. I'm like, what would I put on without that context, right?
I think back to, I want to say 2016, my phone background, it was some Pinterest photo that I found. And imagine the cursive writing from every Pinterest photo from 2016. And it said, hustle. And now I look back, I'm like, I understand why I felt like I needed to have that on my phone. But now I'm like, I don't want to lean in. I think I just want to sit up straight.
Lay down.
Yeah, sit up straight. And then when I'm off, lay down. Yeah. I'm not leading it. It's not worth getting back problems to try to fit into everybody else's mold. And I'm so fortunate that as I've gotten older and I realize that instead of playing the game that I think I need to play, I can play it my way and still be able to build community and find success.
Yes. Which I think is the total theme and epitome of your experience, your story on Survivor and beyond. I love that you mentioned, like, I think people here don't really see me as competition, or that sometimes felt like sidelined or kind of like supporting role. And so you use that to your advantage. And it makes me wonder how often a lot of us are like recognizing that and using it to our advantage. Is that the natural thing that we want to be doing? Like, what does it also mean to, let's say in Survivor, if you were like, no, I want to be like loud and proud, like, and not have to like be strategic around everyone else's. But I also see the strength in like allowing all the egos to play out. Everyone eat each other out alive and stuff. Is that how we continue to play? Or is there a time when we could just be like, no, we are here now?
Yeah, I know. I think about that a lot because I think definitely when I was on Survivor, I was thinking, okay, I know what it was like to work and be in the working world and really be in the world in general as a Filipino woman. And I'm sure you experienced it too, how people respond to you when you are nice and considerate and you work around everybody's wants and needs versus when you assert yourself. And I think that people can't really wrap their head around someone like us asserting ourselves in the way that somebody else does. And I think that when it comes to playing Survivor is a fixed amount of time. The rules of the game are very clear. There's a set prize and there's like a set way to play. You know what I mean? And it's very much about how you manage other people's expectations of you. So in that case where it's very fixed, and of course there's different twists and stuff, but overall the game is like set amount of time, very fixed. I'm like, okay, if I need to get to an endpoint and these are the people around me, I know how they normally view me, so I know how to play in this specific game.
Oh, true.
And then now that game is over, and for me and for you and for everybody, the games, quote unquote, that we're playing are different. What we consider a win to be different. The rules that we choose to play by are different. I don't feel the need to necessarily operate in the same way that I did on Survivor.
Yes.
Is that a
Yes.
good thing? Is that a bad thing? I think it could be a bit of both, but it's also the reality that I know I dealt with that I think a lot of Filipino women deal with. When
Yeah.
you are
That's
working
true.
with a community at Filipina on the Rise, what do you find are the main concerns or the main challenges that these women are facing as they're trying to carve out their place in the world?
I've done, I think, over 100 interviews now of Filipino women who would be considered really like having risen to the top of their industry, broken past their ceilings, made some kind of significant impact as a thought leader, subject matter expert, and all that stuff. Something that I notice that is common with a lot of the guests is that there came a point where they realized they had to go from being like, keep your head down, be the hard worker, you'll get noticed, your merit will give you your success, to actually like truly asking themselves, like, what do I want, and advocating for the self. And I think that has been like an unlearning, right? Of like coming into this country, you and I are both first generation immigrants, and the idea of meritocracy, and then having to teach yourself how to advocate for yourself in the workplace is really huge. I mean, an example of someone I just had recently is Jessica Caloza, who is now the first Filipina assembly member in California. And I know that you just interviewed Rechi Valdez. She had to continuously like advocate for herself to get to those levels through government. It's truly like the same parallel to someone like Christina Rodolfo, who was an editor at Elle magazine, as well as Alyssa Navarro, who worked at Disney. And their things were the same in that when you're in it, no one's thinking about you. No one is seeing like, how do I grow you as a leader? Oh, you're doing so good. How do we get you there? And this related so much to my tech experience because I would just like watch people around me getting promoted and rising faster, and like just being kind of like told your time will come internally and externally. Your time will come. Just work hard. Your time will come. They'll notice you. They'll notice you. And to that point, I think it's super important to, yes, do the hard work. But especially with like Filipinas, we are so good at being the crafty, the resourceful, the DIY, the making everybody feel supported and good. And then when it comes to the point of like getting what you want, you absolutely have to see no one's going to give it to you. No one's going to notice you. No one's going to see like, wow, wait a minute. I think they've been working really hard. I'm going to give them this role, like especially in capitalist like societies where it's a kind of like a race to the bottom or a race to the top, right? You kind of have to fight for yourself and what you want. And that first starts with like deeming yourself as kind of like worthy of it and claiming it for yourself. And I'm sure the same is for you with like even getting casted into this competition, right? And like they go through so many levels of like vetting out all like the potential people, and like, why are you going to be why will you make for an interesting candidate for this? And like getting all this up, you have to like advocate for yourself and first see that you're kind of like worthy of being on the screen, right? And I think a lot of Filipinas think that, and this can be across the board with like a lot of like maybe like children of immigrants, that hard work and meritocracy will get you through. It will to a point, and then you have to basically like get everybody to notice you.
Yeah, I'm curious. How was work modeled to you when you were growing up?
I had young parents growing up. My mom was 24 when she had me. And then we moved from the Philippines to Vancouver, and then from Vancouver to California. And I think just the observation, right, of seeing when you come into like Filipino immigrant communities of people working really hard, working long hours, and kind of that grind, that hustle that equated to like being in a new country and building from the ground up and getting back what you put in, right? And kind of going through the levels to get there. It never occurred to me that you can play a different game other than the game of sequence, right? Of like the game of apply for this, get in, and follow the steps to get up there. And so I remember in Canada, my parents had been practicing doctors in the Philippines, and then all of a sudden they're in Canada. And my dad was working cleaning a retirement home, and my mom was at home with us. We moved to California, and they finally went back to the hospital, never got their degree, like never got to practice again as doctors. But it was like we got to this new country, right? I never saw my parents fully live to their dream But getting to have like a stable career and where we were in our community, it was like the hard work to get you to security and stability. What does it mean, right? To actually go for a bigger dream? It means breaking out of that like work matrix. And no one teaches you how to break out of the work matrix. And so I'm curious, even for you, because like the way that work was modeled to me was long hours at the hospital, coming back home, and every single like a step up economically was just due to putting enough hours and getting enough back for the next thing, versus there could be a different way than all of this. And you learn that really kind of painstakingly when you finally break out of that and you get to be around other people who are doing it a different way. How about yourself?
Honestly, listening to you speak, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's so much that's so similar because my parents had careers in the Philippines and then we moved to Canada when I was very young. And similar to your parents, so my mom was a chemist, my dad worked in business. They come to Canada, their credentials aren't recognized. So then they have to switch to working in retail or doing more physical labor. So my dad worked in construction for a little bit.
Oh my
And
God.
similarly, they weren't able to have the careers that they were working up towards. And that was like a sacrifice that they had to make. And I think because they took this big risk and then they have this family that they need to support, then their approach to work became very risk averse, right? Where similar, I think, to your situation, it was very, very much what I saw was time equals how you make money. So the exchange of time in terms of shifts and getting overtime and working as much as you can is how you can get money. And how you maintain the opportunity to get money is by listening to the managers and being respectful to the managers and everything. So it was very much kind of confined to this one box because that's also what my parents had. That was the opportunity that was available to them because of their specific life circumstance. And I think that now as I get older, something that I've reflected on that I think could be helpful to a lot of Filipinas is to really have that self-compassion for yourself, because I've definitely been in situations where you go to work and the ideals that I think that in North American culture that are really presented are like, be bold or push the envelope or figure out how to optimize or invest or make all this money from other ways. But that's all very opposite to the way that I grew up. And there'd be moments where I'd be frustrated because I'd think, okay, how come I don't know this, or how come this doesn't come naturally to me? And then I think, okay, the reason why I don't naturally know this is because this isn't how I grew up and this isn't what was shown to me. So I can have compassion for myself for knowing that it's okay if I'm not showing up in the same way as other people around me. And at the same time, I can also have a lot of compassion for my parents too. I don't blame them for not showing me a different way of working because this is what was available to them, right? So I think that as I've grown up and, you know, I've made career changes and I've started playing by my own rules, I'm also still almost like soothing myself to say, it's okay that you're still figuring it out. It's okay that you're still learning. It's okay that the way that you kind of need to work, and not to say that there's one way you need to work, but you know what I mean? The way that you can figure out the way to work that is best for you is different from what you know.
Absolutely.
And you can give yourself the time to figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's so good that you mentioned self-compassion and grace, because there is so much discouragement and bullying that we can do to our own selves when it's kind of this feeling that I remember getting of like, why can't you just get this right? Like, why can't you be as as forward advancing as these people in this field? You know, like what's wrong? And you have to understand that we grew up with different dinner table conversations. We grew up with different ideas of economic progress and success and like work modeled to us, right? We just grew up with different language and we don't know yet what we don't know. And so this reminded me so much of this theory called the upper limit problem. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So it's so interesting because it's something I practice on every season of my life. And because as you constantly break past your own ceilings, you're always in new territory. But it's this kind of understanding around when you hit a certain new level and you're in that new territory, you see how you feel incompetent, right? And it's kind of that feeling of like, how did I get here? Your body, your nervous system it's not imposter syndrome. It's quite literally kind of like you get into this zone, right? When we feel like we're in that zone of like new success, new opportunities, new territory, new open doors, new people, new relationships, our subconscious mind begins to self-sabotage us in order to bring us back to a place of familiarity in our comfort zones. And so it's this wonder of like, why am I not moving forward faster no matter how much work I put in? And it's so interesting because I can feel that sometimes when you're there and then this like subconscious self-sabotage starts to happen of like the thoughts of, am I meant to be here? What if they find out? This and that. And it really just is like our own like natural subconscious. We resist our own progress, right? Because we don't feel safe and we want to get back into the comfort zone. So the upper limit problem is something to be so aware about so that you can call it and name it. So if I'm like walking in a room and I met all these people and they want to connect me to these people, and then now I'm there and like what happens is like this creeping thing of like trying to bring you back down that says like, what if they find out you don't have that credibility or you don't have this background, or they're like, they realize that you're not really worth it or this or that. You kind of see like, oh, okay, I can name it. This is just the natural tendency to get us back to a familiar zone. You hold your own and say, this is exactly where I have to be, in the discomfort, in the tension, and kind of like embracing the tension of that.
I love that there's a name for it, because I also work as a keynote speaker and I talk about this moment as the oh shit moment, where you have this goal in mind. Let's say you want to get a certain position or a promotion. So you put in all of the work and then you finally reach this level. So it's like you climb to the top and you get to the top of this new level. And then you look around and you're in this new place you've never been before. And you're like, oh shit, I actually have to do this now. It's not just the climb. Now I'm here and there's another climb.
Yes.
And I found that a lot when I was working in public relations, when I was working in tech. And I think that honestly, winning Survivor helped me a lot to know what to do in those situations, because I had dreamed of being on Survivor since I was 11. Literally my whole life, every single person I knew, I would tell them, oh my God, I'm going to be on Survivor one day. But of course it wasn't possible because Canadians couldn't be on Survivor for the longest time. So then when Canadians could be on the show, I was like, immediately apply, get on the show. I win. I come home from filming the show and I'm so proud of myself. And I'm like, oh my God, I know I kicked ass. And then the show starts to air and then the finale airs and people find out I won. And then I got such a huge backlash for winning. Just like so much bullying, so much backlash. And of course, on the one hand, it sucks, I think, for anybody to get that type of backlash from the internet. But then also me, who had this very specific view about what hard work looked like and what success looked like. And it kind of rewired that, because then I realized, okay, I put in the time, I put in the work, I did it exactly as you're supposed to, and then I won. And then still all of these people thought that I didn't deserve it. So then it made me think, okay, if I can do everything right and then people are still going to say that I don't deserve something, then I may as well do what I want anyways, because people are going to say that anyways. And I think that really rewired my brain for the best in those moments.
Oh my gosh, it shocked me. And then it didn't when I realized that happened, because like, of course, you not only were deserving of the win because of the hard work, like it was a collective process. It wasn't just you, you know, like there's other people in agreement in that competition that like propagated this. And it's so interesting when people say like, oh, you know, deservingness to win or not. I wonder if, because this is something I kind of like learned about in my life, this complex. I wouldn't say that it always plays out, but that society has an idea of what a winner and a leader looks like subconsciously. And because of representation in media, we all kind of have in our heads what a leader should look like and what a side person usually looks like. And so when these things happen, like somebody wins that doesn't look like the winner, right? Or like whatever that means, maybe like I know that you got less airtime throughout it, and maybe like even emphasized on this role as like you being so supportive and it's like whatever. But people really struggle, and it's something we may not admit, but like everybody has a standard in their heads of what a leader or winner should look like, and then it confuses us when it's not that. And I'm curious if you feel like that maybe have played out too, and like how do we overcome that, right?
You know what's wild? So on my podcast, I interviewed Celeste Anderson. So she's also Filipino and she's in Canada. and she won the show King of the Nerds. So it was kind of like, imagine RuPaul's Drag Race, except with all these nerdy challenges. So they bring in all these nerds, like PhD students, but it just think of all of these different types of nerds and they do all these challenges. And then she won the first season. And then she similarly got this huge backlash from the show. She didn't get a lot of screen time. All these people were saying that she didn't deserve it. So then she watched me on Survivor. She watched my win. She watched the people and their response. And she was thinking, oh my God, Erika's going to go through the same thing that I went through. So I interviewed her about her experience. And do you want to know what's wild? Her win on King of the Nerds was more than 10 years before I won Survivor, and still the exact same thing happened. So I don't know if that's a coincidence or if, as you said, people subconsciously, and it's not to say that it's anything negative to these people who subconsciously have these ideas of roles that certain people play, but I think that that's proof that this type of belief exists. And in terms of how to really change that, I think it's like a long game, right? I mean, it's representation. I know that people say this all the time, but it's representation. It's having conversations like this. It's making sure that different people are visible in different roles across the board, whether it's on TV, on a reality show, in movies, in the office. And that's why it's so important for us to be supporting each other in community, to keep pushing us when we have those moments where somebody in our community can reach that new level and might feel like, okay, is someone going to figure out I shouldn't be here? We have to be there and we have to keep supporting them to make sure that other people can see that we can do it.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, a huge reason why I started the Filipino on the Rise podcast and platform and community, right? It wasn't just about our internal community. Of course, it's like number one, let's empower our sisters and rise up together. But also in the intro of my podcast, I say to show the world that we're a force to be reckoned with. Visibility, representation, images are so influential on society. We forget just by looking and seeing and the usual protagonist, the winner, and what that programs into our mind from a young age onwards. And we don't realize how powerful images and representation is, just like at all forms of life. So we need more lead roles and leaders that have the brown skin, girls that are small and short or whatever, you know. I wanted to show in my platform that basically, like, to the whole world, we're more than just like certain professions and more than just like a DEI or a diversity pick or hire. There's something to be inspired and learned through a Filipino woman, through an Armenian woman, through a Indian woman, you know, that has everything and almost like everything to do with her culture, with who she is, but also more than that. Like, it's about like leveling up the playing field, right? And seeing like, this wasn't just about being Filipino. This isn't just about being Indian. This is like, she's a woman, she happens to be Filipino, and she's fucking awesome, and she won Survivor, and she's awesome, and she's building her own company. And like, you know, this is what I hope to promote to the world, because I think we're ready to graduate from tropes around Filipino-ness and see, like, I have a mentor and she's a global investor, and there's so few of her at that field of like other, you know, like Southeast Asian American women or like Southeast Asian women. And yet she's playing the big games. She's up there cutting the big checks, and she's talking to other women who are also playing the big game. And to me, it's like there is so much equal power up here, right? And I don't know, some things, Erika, like I wonder like how even myself, I, for one, have been able to grow in this space a lot because of leading the forefront of diversity representation stories and stuff like that. But how I also notice I'm leveraging this all the time and trying to be the interesting Filipino girl in the room. And that's like my thing. It's my culture. It's my thing. And I kind of stopped wearing the turno like outside because I felt like I was like forcing myself to be like interesting via being Filipino versus like, what does it just mean to show up and be like, wow, like she is a powerful woman and this happens to be something that, you know, she is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's such an interesting insight, right? It's interesting because there's both the representation we see, but then the representation we get to be. And I feel like I, like you, many times when I had a corporate job, I'm like, oh, I'm all of a sudden called in to be in the photo shoot. That's interesting that I've been asked to be in like the office photo shoot. So I totally have checked off the diversity boxes in those ways. But then Honestly, even when I was getting ready for the interview today, I'm like, oh, I'm speaking to Krystl. Should I wear my barong? And I was looking at it. I'm like, you know what? I don't think I need to. I think we're both just hanging out.
Yes.
How do you find that balance between, feeling like you are being, let's say, the right or the perfect Filipina representative versus showing up as yourself?
It's yourself. Like, exactly. Right. I think also just checking in and like, is this authentic to me? Did I trade the corporate suit for the turno sleeves? Even
It's a
though
different
neither
uniform,
of them
yeah.
are really authentically what I want to wear.
Yeah.
Because I think we're so used to having to play a character, right? To get to the destination. And I'm just at this point in my life and of like, no more shape shifting. We've been chameleoning our whole life.
Yes.
We've been code switching our whole freaking life. They even took our names. My real name isn't even Krystl, it's Sade. And yeah, I came to America and decided to go by Krystl, And it's okay. Like here we are. We can own our full selves, but I think like it gets to a point of like, and this isn't just for Filipinos. I think a lot of like people have dealt with this of like this ability to the strength of code switching and being a chameleon and kind of like playing a character to get to that destination. But what if like you said that you can give yourself permission to not play a character and just be fully whoever the F you wanted to be to get there? And then you have to ask yourself that question, like, well, who is that? What would she wear? How would she introduce herself? How would she posture herself in the room? Do you have to put on the new suit every time you want to get to that new level? That's the question.
Yeah. Honestly, I love that you brought up being a chameleon and code switching because I think about ever since I was a little kid, right? Growing up in a city that was mostly white people. There were a few other Asian kids in the school, but we were definitely one of the few in my school, me and my siblings. And then immediately as a kid, I remember being able to look around, look at who is in the room, think about, okay, what do they want right now? What do they think of me? How am I supposed to act in this situation to get by? And I thought about things like that ever since I was a little kid. And I remember like entering the classroom in grade 1 and being able to have that level of consideration. Of course, that's helped me in so many ways, right? I think that being able to think like that is what helped me to win Survivor ultimately.
Totally.
But then also, and I don't know if I've said this publicly, but like, I'm tired. Like sometimes I want to walk into a room and not have to immediately take the temperature of every single thing that's happening and then have to figure out how I'm going to fit in. I'm just like, I just want to chill sometimes. Do you feel like that too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Character play is exhausting. It's very energy draining. It's really like something to flex and to be able to do. That's the reason I can speak and communicate, collaborate with so many different communities and types of people. I mean, like I lived in like 5 different cities in my life and I traveled abroad and gotten to like drop into this and to that and being able to speak so many different like languages, body languages and all that stuff is one thing. But yeah, it is extremely tiring to do that. It takes a lot of mental work. It takes a lot of physical, emotional work. Your nervous system is always getting ready to prep and stuff. It's interesting you bring up growing up and at a young age, being able to do that and sense the room. And what's really going on is like, who do they need me to be? Instead of, oh, this is me. This is how I want to be. It's like a subconscious, a default, like, who should I be here? And I remember growing up when I was younger, flip through those like teen magazines. If you remember like those teenage
pop, yes.
Like, yeah, all that stuff. This is what I was doing at a young age. I would flip through it and be like, which girl should I be this year at school? Which one? Okay. And like, I would rip out pictures of, I don't know, like certain, like Hillary Duff or Alan AJ or like just some musicians or something. And I would try to study them. And I would pick which white girl I wanted to embody at school so that I can be popular or be cute and stuff. And I was essentially like putting away my own personality and trying to try this on to see if it worked at school. It was just such a moment. I remember it was like I would rip out the magazines and put it up and study her and try to be her at school. And doing that at a young age, right? Like that's so interesting how we essentially like didn't feel safe to navigate environments as we were. You had to try on and put on. And even as I go back to like Austin for South by Southwest this year, like there's something about like when I show up in spaces, it would be great to not feel like I had to load the personality or like load up, right? Like of who you are and just be like, no, I, for one, can like have proven myself time and time again to be in this space. And then second, whoever they see, I've been using this term like having a potent personality, that your personality is potent enough on its own and you don't need the label, you don't need like the imagery, the character play. What if your personality was just potent enough?
Oh, I like that. See, I think back to when I was a kid. As an adult now, I look back, I'm like, okay, I feel like I understand where a lot of this thought and this overthinking came from. Because when you're somebody who is a first generation immigrant and then you go to school, it's very much about North American culture, right? Where they're like, we want you to be bold, we want you to be assertive. But then what you're taught at home are the more traditional Asian values, right? And then you go home. And then what I experienced was my family thought I was too loud or self-assured compared to traditionally what they wanted. So immediately from a young age, I was always thinking, okay, I'm too much for this place. I'm not enough for this place. Not really sure who I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to be where. So let me just immediately adjust to wherever I am. I also have self-compassion for me as a little kid. And I hope you have self-compassion for you looking through the magazines, because we couldn't help that this is how we grew up, right? This was just the environment that we were in, and we figured out the best way to cope with it. I think that now as an adult, I still have to, I don't want to say put on a character, but I think that as someone who operates in the public, I just have to know to protect myself, right? I remember what it was like to get bullied after reality TV, and I have to know how to protect myself. So I think that because of that, now what I'm trying to focus on is having the tools to be able to go wide and still be able to interact with many people, but then having core people in my life who I can go deep with. And I don't have to put on as many of the masks or the characters or all those protective things that I need to do, and just have the safe, deep relationships with certain people where I can just exhale and not have to worry about fitting into something specific.
So when you're in a public setting and everyone is a big personality, and there's kind of like this social interaction going on and wanting to be notable, or like people, introducing themselves and whatnot, what is your intention with that? And like, what is the state that you drop into so that it's a balance of my authentic self and the other balance of having an impact in those interactions and being intentional in them too?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like it really depends on what I want in that situation.
Yeah.
Like, is it a situation where I feel like I want the attention? I'm like, okay, then that means I need to show up in a different way where I acknowledge everybody else, but then I also make sure that in acknowledging them, I also, wedge myself in and I create opportunities for me to get attention. Or is it a situation where, let's say, I feel like I just have to be there for whatever reason and I just want to get through, then I show up in a different way where I'm there, I'm polite to everyone, I have good one-on-one conversations with a few people, then I just like get in and get out as quickly as possible. So I think that for me now, instead of looking at the room and figuring out, okay, how do I need to respond to these people? Then I think, what do I want from being here? Like, what's my intention being here? And then I look at all of the people around me and then I figure out what I'm supposed to do. So I feel like that helps me to make it more me focused. But at the same time, I will admit, it's still a lot of thinking just to socialize. I hope, like, sometimes I wish I could be in the head of somebody who doesn't have to think through all of the levels of the emotional intelligence and all of the social layers and can just like go into a situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's so good when you mention having intention before walking in and how that really does quiet the noise. You save yourself so much energy and like overthinking when you're very clear on, why am I here? What would I like from this space and what would I like to give to this space? And that is something I also do before walking in. It's like, what do I want to receive? But what do I want to offer to people? As long as I can say, like, as long as I made people feel celebrated and encouraged in whatever they shared with me, that's great. If I got something that was a referral or a new connection in whatever project I was working on, that's great. And then it just allows that overabsorption to not happen. I learned this one thing, especially as an empath, right? So it's like, I'm an empath and I've only learned recently how to manage that. With being an empath, I would really feel into everyone's experiences around me. And again, there's the strength of that because then you're able to communicate and make people feel supported and seen. And on the other hand, oh man, it is very tiring to take in everyone's emotions and feelings and stories. I even remember in the beginning of the podcast, I would tend to get so in their shoes, right? Like being able to be put in that person's shoes and in their story. And then I would hold it and contain it. And that after a podcast, especially like a really like emotionally charged story, after that, the rest of the day, I would just feel exhausted. One of the podcast episodes, I got physically sick. And that's what happens when you take on people's positives, but also the negatives and the traumas that is holding in their body could be transferred on yours. And so I've had to like develop this practice of like observe, don't absorb, right? And you can quite literally like feel yourself almost like absorbing people around you, but then you stop and you just say, I'm going to observe this right now. I'm just going to be in observation mode. As if you're like in the seat at a movie theater and just like, this is something I do.
I
Also,
like that.
a lot of people with social anxiety. So I actually don't ever struggle with social anxiety. I love being around people. Like if I could just like network for a living, I would. I just like love to like bounce around people. But my fault is that I absorb people too much. I just get too invested in all of it, right? And so people that I help or mentor or like friends with social anxiety, I say, hey, just go into the room and pretend like it's a movie you're watching. And like, you don't have to say much. You don't really even have to be much. Just pretend like you're going in there with a bag of popcorn and you're just going to be like, huh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is kind of like entertaining and humorous for you. And honestly, the whole experience just becomes lighter and more enjoyable and kind of humorous also. So I've learned observing is a really like great power move when like going into a place. And it also allows you to like pause. And this is something that I think you practice with Survivor, just kind of like letting people go at it, reveal their cards a little bit. And then when it's time for you to come in, you're a little bit more, you've processed and you allow yourself to speak when necessary.
I feel like when you take a step back, you realize so much stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like I even think about that when I was working in tech, and no disrespect to any of my old colleagues when I work in tech, I think all of you would agree. But sometimes when I think back to those meetings that I would sit in, now, you know, like the clown music, like the circus music, that's what plays in my head where it's like, do, 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 do. I'm like, what were we even talking about? You know? And I think that even in other situations too, right? It's easy to think about, okay, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. But when you take the step back, you're like, okay, all that matters really is showing up as me and true connection. And then everything will kind of work itself out. And I think that I'm fortunate that I think especially after leaving, you know, a corporate job that was so much more structured, I have more control over my schedule and who I talk to and the things I work on. I'm like, wow, life actually can be a lot easier, like not having to do so many of the things that I feel like don't matter.
Yeah.
How did things shift for you when you switched from working in tech to being an entrepreneur? I think for one, Filipino, at least like the way that I grew up, it was very risky to go from the stable job to working in entrepreneurship. So like, was it risky for you? And then what do you think were the big shifts in your mindset when you switched?
I mean, definitely risky, right? Anytime you leave a stable career where there is a paycheck and health benefits, and mind you, I haven't had health benefits in 3 years and I'm still alive and kicking. Thank you, God. Don't let me get hit by a car, please. I can't afford it.
I'm sending out good vibes, no cars.
I think for one, when you just have that natural ability to like operate as like a risk-loving, like high-risk person, right? I think when you do the full jump into your own full-time gig, whether as an entrepreneur, founder, a freelancer, working on a passion project, committing to it full-time without the financial paycheck, there has to be a little bit of that financial savviness, right? That instinct for being like, how am I going to stretch the numbers here, right? And so there's that. And then second, kind of that like, there is a true adrenaline and momentum to like, wow, we're going all in, we are committing to this, that I think works to the advantage in the beginning, because like kind of like having that, and I always say that like my last tech job, the CEO was my first investor and he just doesn't know it, because I was actually fueling a lot of what I was already doing and building with the paychecks and stuff. And so it was going to that. So by the time that I went into it, something was already built. There was already some kind of form of like potential revenue income streams and stuff. I will say the biggest learnings of that first and 2 year of entrepreneurship that I advise to anybody is that one, you are learning for the first time how to manage yourself. You're learning yourself in this new world where there's not a lot of structure, and there's going to be a huge learning curve to that. And that usually takes a while to learn how to manage either your day-to-day, your schedule, your priorities, and your motivation. What really helps is having someone let's say like a business coach, or I think I had 3 business coaches in the beginning, or a coach and stuff to bring you along the way. Make sure you are working or getting coached or mentored by people who are already a few steps ahead of you to get you there, right? Those are things that I would look back and tell myself about that year. Also, to the point of not trying to do everything, I think there was this idea that you could do it all and try it all in that first year. And it's not realistic unless you have a team behind you who are producing all these things. It's actually going to waste a lot of your time and resources and energy to dip your hand in a lot of pots and to be very like focused and pointed on one destination. And the one after that would be much better. I mean, with Filipino on the Rise, it's interesting because we had the podcast, we were going on social media, and then I started running all these events around the country and then starting up a membership and starting a product. And there was something about doing so much at once that was like, wow, we could do it all. I honestly think like it was such a miracle that I had been able to go to that scale as a 1 or 2 person team. And then it just hits this limit of like, you're not only spread out too thin, but you're not going deep anymore with anything. And it's this question of like, do you want to cover it all or do you want to focus on mastery? And I had to really stop what I was doing and decide on not scaling. I went through this like whole phase of being like anti-growth for a while. Just be anti-growth because we have so much going on. It's called going inch wide and mile deep. Can you just focus when the whole world is like viral growth, grow really fast and whatever. And like, what do I actually care about is care about the quality of my community and my members, and that I'm giving them quality products and work and all that stuff, and that I get to deepen in who I am instead of being spread out so much. So we really shifted the model instead of like, let's grow really fast, let's get over 1 million followers and whatever, to going like, who do we already have? Who's already here? And this can be really applicable to anyone listening. It doesn't have to be about growing your followers, but let's say that you do want to grow in whatever business project you have. Let's say you have 10 people that showed up and when everybody else has like 100. Well, that's great. Focus on the 10 people, get to know them, do a deep dive, understand their problem areas, and then keep serving them at that. And so go a mile deep and an inch wide, and things actually grow so much more meaningfully beyond that. That's why they say the whole like niche down and stuff. And the people who focus there, they naturally grow to those levels that they need to, because I think what we're doing right is actually doubling down on who's already there, getting really mastered at that, and not even caring about quantity over quality.
That's so smart. I know that there's so much self-comparison in the world where you're like, okay, I'm looking at this person, they're holding this many events, this person has this many followers, but really what you have is already abundant, so just focus on that. I also feel like so much of that is so opposite of how at least I was normally raised as a Filipino. Like, I know you mentioned earlier, Filipino is so DIY, figure it out. If you can do it, why would you get somebody else to help you? Now, one of the best lessons I learned is I don't have to do, like, or be good at everything. Some things, I just have to pay somebody else to do it, and it's fine.
Yes. Yes. I mean, the whole mentality of like DIY, right? Like, I don't know about like when it was for you, Erika, but I noticed I'm like, in order to get to the next levels, you quite literally have to delegate. You have to. You need to find a way to offload and delegate and like outsource. Because if you just get stuck in the, I could do it, I DIY myself, and that's great to a point. But really, it gets to a point where you need to outsource things, right? And so I think that allowed me to start planning. Like, let's say right now you can't do it. I just interviewed like another investor on like, how do you get help when you don't have enough to hire? First, making that intention, like I want to hire, I want to bring on a team, I want the support. Like now I have a team that I really love, but I have to plan around that. Okay, great. In order to hire, you can get creative around getting support and a team. Maybe you can barter, maybe you can exchange, you get sweat equity, or you create some kind of plan for yourself. You prioritize like, I'm going to get this, but because of this hire and this investment, it's going to return this much back. I'm going to bring on someone who can help me find. I'm getting very like all businessy right now, and I hope this was helpful, but getting creative with getting the help that you need is absolutely a priority that people should be making instead of having to do the solo DIY all the time.
And I think that honestly, that applies even beyond entrepreneurship, right? I think that for Filipinos, again, it's about being so savvy about doing everything yourself. But even in your personal life, if you can and you want to hire a personal trainer, hire a personal trainer. If you can and you want to hire somebody to clean your house once a month, hire somebody to clean your house once a month. I feel like a younger version of me would feel guilty about doing anything where I hire somebody to do something that I know I could do myself, but it's
Yes.
okay. And I think you have permission. Anyone listening, you have permission to do those things for yourself, to lighten your load and to make yourself more available for the things that you want to do, whether it's business or in your
Yeah.
personal life.
Is there something recently that you have noticed because you got help in this area, or you had someone come in and you kind of just made that decision, took that risk to, invest in something, to buy yourself time, and it's been like an actual change in results and like a better place for you?
Yeah, I think that anything that has to do with accounting, I think that I was like, let me try to just keep this together on my own. And I'm like, I'm not bad. But if there is someone there who can do it way better than me, who I trust, why don't I just allow this person to do this stuff? I would get so bogged down in trying to research and trying to wire my brain to do this thing. And I think just accepting, I'm like, okay, this one, not for me. Just move it on to somebody else. I feel so much lighter. And I'm like, yes, it's going to cost money to outsource this, but I feel like I've freed up so much more time and energy.
No, I totally agree. That's a good one.
Yeah, I'm like, any Filipinas listening, and really not even just Filipinas, anybody, you are worthy and you are deserving of doing the things to make life easier.
Absolutely. And a last term, I'm going to throw in another term that I've learned, and this is from a book on the joy of business, but it applies to anybody. It's about the zone of genius. And you want to stay in your zone of genius, and like identifying your zone of genius is really important because it's where your strengths and something that comes easily for you to do overlap with something you actually really enjoy. Right. And so when you can identify staying in your zone of genius, then you learn how like those are areas that I can delegate. It's really about staying in a joyful life, in the joy of your life, right? An example of this really quickly is that content. I actually don't enjoy creating content. I'm good at it, but it got to a point where I didn't enjoy it. And much to everyone's like surprise, it's just something I don't really enjoy. I love being though in person and being in front of people. I love hiring and building a team and getting people to grow. And I realized that the quicker that I focused on staying in those two zones of genius, everything else actually figured itself out. So maybe for you, it's keynoting and speaking. And maybe for someone listening, it's like, oh, my zone of genius is actually getting to create or to write, or like my zone of genius is being able to get inspiration and bring that back home and try, plan your life around your zone of genius. And it doesn't mean that you forget how to take care of yourself in all other areas. Quite literally, it's actually very efficient and it helps you like not only optimize, but stay in a joyful existence in your life.
I love that. And the thing that you don't like doing is probably somebody else's zone of genius.
Yes.
So get them to do it.
Yes, for sure. I know. And like for my team, I actually get everybody to do a StrengthsFinder quiz and a test that we do, and we share that with each other. And we share each other's zones of genius because we're like, oh, okay, stay in your zone. Like that's for that person's zone. And like it all works out better. So yeah. Erika, I know that like we're kind of like going close to the end, but you put a question here that I really loved. It was about maintaining your self-worth and the challenge of devaluing ourselves and unlearning that mindset. And this is something that I find that it really is going to be a lifelong challenge, especially as you rise above in certain levels. How do you practice maintaining your self-worth?
Yeah. You know what? When I do keynotes, there's this one phrase that in one of my keynotes I talk about all of the time. And it's when you are underestimated, which I know many Filipino women are, when you're underestimated, don't focus on your value, focus on your values. And it's because I spent so much of life on the hamster wheel of trying to prove my value to other people. But again, like similar to me winning Survivor, you're never going to guarantee what other people think about you or how other people view you. So if you are operating in a way to get this validation from other people, you're always going to be on this hamster wheel. So instead, focus on what's important to you and use that to make your decisions about how you want to contribute to the world. So instead of trying to do something because this is how everybody else does it, or this is what I think I need to do, think about, okay, what are my core values? And that's what I ask myself. So my core values are authenticity and courage. So whenever I need to make a big decision, then I ask myself, is this the authentic thing to do? Is this the courageous thing to do? If it's a yes, then I do it. That doesn't mean that there's no friction. Often that actually means I'm probably creating friction between other people. But I can live with that because I know that I'm being true to myself. So I think that when I focus on my own values, then I can maintain my own value for myself.
Yeah.
What about you?
I love that, on values. And for myself, just to piggyback off of that, it's something I do. For me, my mission has always been to help others feel seen. It's something that I love and am passionate about. And I think with self-worth, it could get so easy to measure that on like these external measures and stuff. But when I started to always tap into what am I on earth here to do, right? I'm here to be a conduit of light to help others feel seen. And as long as I'm doing that, it kind of takes away the pressure of being like, am I worthy? Am I worthy to be here? It's just being so like, I think, clear and motivated by your personal mission really helps in this, because no matter what, your intrinsic worth is never going to change. It shouldn't change based on how someone sees it, right? You can walk around the street and have a diamond, and someone who doesn't know how to recognize a diamond from someone who does, it doesn't change the worth of that diamond. But I think something that's really helped so much is to kind of like pull myself out of myself and like, will they see me? Am I worthy? To back to that personal mission of like, I just love to help others feel seen. And as long as I'm doing that, like there's just a kind of like the lightness and like the fullness of worthiness. And lastly, a mantra that I live by is find a hole in the world in the shape of you and fill it. And so what that means is there's something on this earth that needs to be done. There's a problem. There's so many problems in this earth. And there's an area that is actually perfectly in the shape of you and who you are, your personality, your way of doing things, your story, your experience. And it's actually waiting for you to fill that in that role. And that's something I think like growing up, I was always like, why can't I be a doctor? Why don't I look like this person? Like, why aren't I fitting into this academic track and like whatnot? And when you realize like find a hole in the shape of you and you fill that with you, that becomes just so much more like permission to be the one to claim it, right? And say, it's me that's going to fill this because it needs me as me to fill that. So yeah.
I love that. I think that that is the best wisdom to end up on. I don't think it can get any better than that. Can you share with the listeners where people can follow you and Filipina on the Rise?
Yeah. Follow on Instagram, Filipino on the Rise. That's usually where we do most of our announcements. And I'll see all our events and our podcast interviews and whatnot coming up. And then there's also my personal on there, which is Krystl Fabella. And also for my listeners, Erika, can you share as well?
Yes, of course. So I'm mostly on Instagram. So it's Erika_Cas. And my name, Erika, is spelled with a K. And then my podcast, Happy to See Me, is available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Maraming salamat. It was so good to talk to you.
It was so good talking to you as well, Erika. I look forward to seeing all the other areas where your bright purple hair is going to be represented and showing what, powerful Filipinas are, and also just you as a powerful person.
Thank you. I can't wait to see you next time, whether turno or not.
Yes.
This podcast has been brought to you by the Sonar Network.